before we get going? Don't you love how my screensaver promoted us for the last 20 minutes? I mean, when can my logo appear behind Frank Lloyd Wright?
Yeah.
I mean, think of it. Wouldn't you love that to happen? Right. Well, I had a 2-hour and 22-minute presentation scheduled. Frank Lloyd Wright cut half of that. And so I'm gonna do something I normally do, which is I'm gonna scrap a whole bunch of things I was gonna talk about, and talk about 5 or 6 major things. And I want to tell you before we get started, those of you that put a card in the back there, I'm going to give away a book, and it's a guide to reshaping your design practice. I've spent my entire life from the time I went to Rhode Island School of Design and had hair to now working with architects and engineers across the world to improve business practices. And one of the theses that I talk about with students all the time is design can be economically very beneficial. Design can be a very profitable lifestyle in business. And one of the things that I look at now that I've been doing this for 35 years and have no more here because I work with architects and engineers. Everybody hear that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that when you think about what we all do, and most of you in this room are principals in your firms and have an ownership role or are high-level executives in another firm. Some of you are from the client side, the Disney people I noticed on the list. People that are experiencing a great life in design. Sure, we're in tough times, but just remember one thing, 90% of the people in the United States are employed. It's only 10% are unemployed. 90% of the people out there are doing something. Yet we say we're in a bad economy, okay? This too shall pass. How many people remember 1989, 90, and 91? Okay, we will be back there. We're not going away. This profession will be there. And it's a great lifestyle. The one thing that I tell people, when people say, well, what do you remember about all the things you've done in your entire life? The one thing I say to people is, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world because I can go into any of over 300 cities in the world, pick up the phone, and call an architect friend or an engineer friend and have dinner. And I think that's probably the thing that's most important to me in everything we've done. And we work our buns off to try to help firms be more profitable, to be more effective, and to do things. And I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 points here without even going into my slides. I have some things up there. I have today's headlines. Things like right at noontime, the Dow Jones is at its high point for 2009. And that's a predictor of what will happen 6 months to 9 months away. Right at noontime, the dollar is weaker. The Treasury sale yesterday was lower. So interest rates are going to go up. We all know this stuff. I'm not going to repeat the facts. I will tell you that on our website I've put my entire presentation, all the slides, all the data from our statistics, and you can go out and you can look at it all. And anybody that wants to spend time later, I'll give you a whole bunch of those statistics. I will tell you that we surveyed 538 firms on June 30th across the United States. We do this quarterly now. And those 538 firms, on an index that we developed about 5 years ago, are for the first time in the last 6 quarters optimistic about the future. Optimistic. There are more proposals out there today than there were a quarter ago. The hit rate on proposals is still averaging 1 out of 2 out of those 538 firms. In our Circle of Excellence firms, which are the top 25% performers of all firms in the country, the average profitability on June 30th is still exceeding 20%. So there are people out there still kicking butt. There are a whole bunch of people in trouble. We all know that. They're not here this week, are they? Okay? We've all laid off people. I mean, it's, the interesting thing that we do, and I can go over year after year the things that we do, even though we know better, we do the same thing. We lay off the lowest end of the people first, which means that the average cost rate in our profession has gone up, which means that our billing rates are up because the business model we use is still to sell time, to sell hours, to sell our services to our clients. I'm going to challenge you in a few minutes with a new way to do business, okay? A new way that we're seeing in many firms across the world that produces higher value and gets you more money and allows you to do a better job of design. But let me start out with a couple of things. First off, I'm a student of demographics. And I think everybody in this room needs to look at the demographics of our world and what's happening. And I want to make 2 points for you. Everybody's heard about the baby boomer generation. Any of my fellow baby boomers in this room? We're all about to die. That's what they're all saying. Let me write this on your pad right now. 70 is the new 30. Everybody got that? I'm not going away. Everybody says, when are you going to retire? I tell people I retired 30 years ago when I figured out what I love to do in life, and I do it every day. Everybody in this room doing the same thing? If you love to do it, my definition of retirement is when you are choosing what to do with your time, instead of having other people choose it for you. And when you think about that from a baby boomer generation, we are a generation that went to Woodstock. I was there. We defined a whole bunch of things coming out of that Vietnam War. We changed the world. And now here we are, and people are telling us we're going to evaporate. That's not going to happen. So what's the impact of that on your design firm? A couple of things. There's a heck of a lot of knowledge resident in the minds of the baby boomers that's not going to walk away. We need to know how to capture that knowledge, employ that knowledge, and not let it walk out of the firm. One of the biggest things we do these days, and I am more busy than anybody doing ownership transition work across the world. We do conferences on it. I go out and speak on it. I've written probably 138 buy-sell agreements myself. And it's a hard thing to do because everybody looks at transferring ownership and transferring leadership. What I want you to think about is capturing intellect in the minds of the baby boomers and putting it to use in your firm in different ways. Demographics says that we in the United States work a 40-hour week and that's our standard. Well, who said that's got to be the standard? Let's reinvent the way we work. Let's allow people to work 4 hours a week if they want to. Let's allow people to work from their home. Let's take advantage of the second thing I'm going to talk about here and what technology is doing to what we're going to do in the near future. First, anybody can work anyplace. This little laptop I have right here has my entire world on it. How many people in this room are carrying a BlackBerry right now? Some people didn't raise their hand because they're down here doing this and didn't see it. That's that question, okay? So we all know that technology is allowing different ways to use talent. We need to take advantage of that wherever it is in the world. One of the people who walked up to me earlier was one of my colleagues, and I mentioned that we had put together a joint venture with an architecture firm that I'm on the board of in Australia, together with an architecture firm in Tennessee back 5-6 years ago, to design and do the documentation for all the Gaylord properties, starting with the Gaylord Orlando, and moving into the Gaylord Dallas, and Gaylord up in Virginia. And 90% of the documents were done in Australia, while the design was done in Tennessee on a joint venture across the planet. Now, every architect I talk to said, well, I can't do that. I'm only 8 people. How do I connect with somebody in the other part of the world? Let me tell you, you can connect. Because all you have to do is call your Dell service representative, and I guarantee they are alive and well in the Philippines answering your phone call. The technology is there to do all of this. Okay? So the demographics. The baby boomers aren't going away. Let me give you another little demographic science. And by the way, there used to be a magazine out there called American Demographics, and I don't know any architects that used to read it. It's gone now because they couldn't get enough subscribers. There weren't enough demographics to read about demographics. But literally, you need to study what's going on with where people are moving, what they're doing, and how it's happening. We're sitting in the state of Florida just yesterday. I was talking to a former lieutenant governor here, Tony Jennings. I gave her an idea because she's on the board of a not-for-profit here. And I said, let's talk about vision for the future in Florida. Let's talk about what's happening in Miami right now with high-rise condominiums, speculative developer condominiums that are all gone bust. Everybody been down there and seen some of that stuff down there? Well, everybody's problem is somebody's opportunity. The mayor of Tampa said, Tampa's not going away. You know that Florida's not going away. And you know that the baby boomers are going to continue to come to warmer places, right? How many people here want to move back to Detroit? Anybody? Nobody. So when you start to think about that stuff, you start to think about the problem with those projects down there, and you look at the demographics of the aging society, what if we turn a lemon into a lemonade? Let me give you an idea that I gave to her yesterday. What if we go down there and form some nonprofit funds and get some funds out of pension funds and other things and buy up a couple of those properties and look at one of the hot markets we have right now, and that is assisted living. We take one of those 30-story buildings that's nothing but a shell of concrete right now with a wire fence around it, bankrupted and held by a bank. We take 10 of them, we take 20 of them, and we turn them into assisted living, with the first 10 floors being an ambulatory care center, the second 10 floors being assisted living, the third 10 floors all the way up to the top being nice apartments. We move people from the top to the middle to the bottom, and if you buy the lot next door, build a cemetery, and we put them right in. Look, I said this to a group a year ago that does assisted living design in Virginia. They came down here and they did it. So there is at least one project going on to take advantage of it. What we have to do is look at demographics and be ahead of the wave. Surfboards, ahead of the wave. When you're behind the wave, you don't get on the wave. And each and every one of us has watched in our lifetime the wave of our economic demographics of this baby boom propel what's going on. All the way through my lifetime, I've seen it. Another demographic fact that I'll give you is that we have to look at it globally. I was asked to go to a special clandestine meeting for which I had to get White House security back 4 years ago to sit with the Joint Chiefs of Staff as a business leader in the United States. It was a fascinating meeting. We had to go to an Air Force base that I can't even tell you about. And we sat for a week in seclusion, hearing from the Joint Chiefs of Staff the military strategies over the next 20 years for this country, and as business people commenting on those military strategies. And I heard before it was announced about the African Command. Now, this is the first major command by the military over the last 30 years. The Central Command, which is based in the Middle East, is breaking off a division to become the African Command. And they wanted to know what our thoughts were about that. Well, we were all a little bit in shock. Why are we doing this? What about Africa? And then they pointed out with demographic slides what's going on. Now, you've all heard of the one-child policy in China, and everybody's terrified of China and where we're going, and China's going to take over the world and everything else. A demographer stood up and said, don't worry about China, one-child policy. All those kids also are spoiled brats, and they're going to become hungry consumers, and they're going to leave China. So China will not be a threat, but Africa will be a threat. Because from a demographic point of view, in Africa, they are having 12 kids for every 2 adults. In China, they're having 1. 12 kids for every 2 adults. There's polygamy throughout Africa on the entire continent. There's disease throughout Africa, which is attracting the attention of the entire world to solve the problem. If we solve the problem of disease, 12 of the 12 kids will survive. Why are they having 12 kids? Because if you go back historically to an agrarian society, you see that we had 12 kids. Because historically, the male is weaker than the female, sorry, guys, biologically. So out of 12 kids, if 8 of them were males, 3 would die before the age of 12. And you need to plow the fields, so you'd need 12 kids to have 8 or 9 left to take care of the food supply. Now in Africa, it's still there. Add polygamy to that, which divides the society. Those with the money end up with 6, 8, 10, 12 wives. Those with no money end up with none. So in 25 years, the projection by the military of the United States is that the continent of Africa will be filled with uneducated 25-year-old males with a greater population than any place on the planet, sitting on the world's 3rd largest supply of oil in Western Africa. So why do we have an African Command today? What do you think is going to be a problem 25 years from now? Uneducated, dominant male population, one of the bigger populations in the world. It's going to be a hot spot for problems 25 years from now. Now, if you study demographics, you start to think about that. If you're an architect, and you start to think about what we need to design and where it's going to be designed, and you look at the movement of population, and you hear population coming to the south and to the west and to things of that sort, you need to be in certain types of projects doing certain kinds of things ahead of the curve. So demographics. Now let's add to the technology part of it. And let me talk a little bit about technology. I have 3 kids. How many people have kids? Right? Anybody here got a teenager? You're the lucky ones. They can know how to operate your software and your other stuff. turn on your equipment and turn off your equipment, okay? But I have a 20-year-old, it's very interesting. He's working part-time at PSMJ now, and he went into the office over the course of the summer, put out an email to our 130 people, most of whom are pretty mature adult architects and engineers who work with us. He said, you know, your problem, guys, is you don't know about Facebook. And he's saying this to all my adult people. I said, say it, Justin, go ahead out there. Well, they got into this big debate on what would Facebook do for real business. And he made one very interesting point. He said, you know, 10 years from now, I'll be running a business, and my friends know Facebook, and yours don't. That was a very interesting statement. Now, you may agree or disagree with social networks, with the impact of that level of technology, but I want you to think about the people that are walking around on the planet today that are making millions of dollars off social networks, that are in a world that I don't understand. I mean, I want to go out on my boat and get away from all this stuff. Okay? The kids are embracing it, and we need to embrace it in our firm. So what I say to people these days is, BIM will rule the world in 10 years. I don't know how the hell to operate that stuff. Most of you probably don't either, and you see it as the next CAD. I remember standing at one of our conferences back in 1980. We invented a little thing called the AEC System Shows. Anybody remember our computer conference? Well, that was my show. And I remember standing up at one of the first conferences and making a prediction. And, you know, talking about CAD and what would happen, and that everybody by the year 1990 would have a computer on their desk. Now, this was 1980, okay? And I remember people saying, you're out of your mind. And AIA, I went to AIA with the idea to do a computer show in 1978, and was told by the 1978 executive director, the computers really don't have a place in architecture. So we did it on our own, okay? So we did it on our own. Now look where we are. How many people remember when you used to walk into a marketing presentation and say, and we have CAD?
Yeah.
And it was a differentiator. I want you to try that next week. I remember firms, I remember going into HKS back, there was somebody here from HKS, saw a name on it. Who was the HKS person? Anybody? I saw the name on the list. They may not have shown up, but back in Dallas. And I remember going in there one day, and the former CEO said to me, he said, we have CAD. See, it's over there. And there was a big glass circular thing. There was a 1K auto troll system with a Calcom plotter. It all cost $3 million, and there was a 25-year-old nerd inside there, and they never produced a thing. But they had CAD. So where are we going with all of this? Well, you know, you need to embrace technology. One of the slides I have here that I didn't show you, statistically, is the fact that our overhead rates have gone up about 14% in the last year. And a major portion of that overhead is the investment in technology. Our billing rates are not going up as fast as our costs are going up in technology. And in health insurance, okay? And in health insurance. So two major factors are driving our overhead up. And it's hurting us. It's really hurting us. Think about the money you're spending in technology right now in your own office. Think about the dedicated CAD person over here. He's my AV person that has to be every place. They run the world. Here's a prediction for you. Within 10 years, one of your equal partners will be your technology partner. Your IT person will be a partner in your firm at the highest level. Now, I want you to think right now about your own office and what happens if your technology goes down, and goes down for 30 days. How many people are out of business if your technology goes down? How many people are out of business if you hire a bad person to be your technology person and they destroy files or they undermine something? Now, 99% of the people in the world are good, but there are a few bad people out there. They will be partners in your firm within the next 10 years, and we will be technologically driven. Now, the good news of that is you need less people if you take advantage of this. And what are we in the business to do? And here's where I go with the third thing that I want to talk about, and that's economics a little bit, and the economics of our business. I've taught at the school I went to, Brian, I've spoken at Harvard. I've talked to business school students all over the place. And if I were talking to you or a group of MBA students, and I were to ask you the business model we have here, it's a very simple business model. If it's on a time card, we bill it. Everybody got that? And we all know, everybody's got to fill out time cards except principals. We all know that. They have their assistant put hours on their time card, put an hour on everybody's job, whether or not they work on it. What is the definition of a principal? I don't know. But seriously, the business model we have in this profession, even exemplified in the video show up here, when they asked the real Frank Lloyd Wright, are you selling a service? Is that we're in a service business. I'm going to tell you, I don't think that the successful architects of the next century will be in a service business. Because we've spent the last 20 years since I started that system show decreasing the number of hours that we bill clients by increasing the amount of technology we use, by reusing drawings, by doing all the things we can to be more efficient. And we've reduced our fees as a percentage of building costs in the interim. Now that's not the way to success. Let's cut and cut and cut and cut our way right out of business while everybody else is getting value. While everybody else. So I don't think our future model can be the hourly model, guys. We've got to get out of that. Now, we've used all kinds of tricks to try to get away from it. We can argue here, and I can argue just back as hard as you want, that we all ought to be doing lump sum fees, and that's really not selling hours. So fine, let's get rid of the time cards. Why keep track of time? But we still keep track of time. And we still divide those hours into that lump sum fee. And we still come up with hourly rates. And we still measure things, and I know that because I got 538 firms giving me data about their overhead rates and about their hourly multipliers and all kinds of stuff. For the last 30 years, the favorite slide I have in our whole repertoire of data is my multiplier slide. We are still at a 2.5 to 3 times multiplier in our profession, and we were there in 1970 when I graduated from design school. It's sad. It's really sad. But the only way to change that is to change the way we do business. And one of the slides you'll get when you download my slides is a thing about changing the way we do business. And it starts with value. And I want to talk about value for a second, not in a generic sense. And value is not doing something called good design. Value is adding wisdom to the mix. Not knowledge, not data, not history, but wisdom. And I want you to think about a company that went from selling hours to selling wisdom. The company used to be called Anderson Consulting. The company was Anderson Accountants for a number of years. And what did they sell? They sold audit services. And then at one point, a group of people got together and they formed a little company. They decided to call it Accenture. Now, what's the difference between what Accenture does and what Anderson Consulting did? Well, Anderson Consulting did tax audit services. They sent fleets of accountants into businesses and sold hours. And they billed on an hourly basis, hour after hour after hour. And audit jobs used to take 30,000 hours at $200 and they get their hourly rate. What does Accenture sell? Wisdom. How many people know the firm McKinsey? Have you ever heard of them? Ever heard of McKinsey? How many people in the room? Anybody? Is McKinsey an inexpensive firm? They are the most expensive consultants on the planet. Do they sell hours? No, they don't. They sell wisdom. So now I ask you to think about what wisdom you have in whatever you do in design. What is the wisdom you have? And there's a lot of wisdom in this room. I'm humbled by you sitting here because all of you are much better at architecture than I am. I haven't done it for 30 years. All of you have knowledge and wisdom that you give away to your clients 1 hour at a time. All of your clients ask you for proposals into which you pour your heart for the opportunity to sell hours of drafting. Your proposal is the most valuable thing you do, yet you give it away. Now I want you to think about that wisdom because it's about positioning. I want to talk about a new business model right now. and a way to do it. You've all heard the words design thesis. When I talk to students, I love to throw that word out because they talk about design thesis and man, it sounds like a school thing, right? Let me tell you what I think a design thesis is. A design thesis is an opinion about the way the design of something should be done. It's an opinion based on your lifetime of accumulated knowledge and wisdom about the way something should be done. When I go into Fanning and Howey, the school consultants in Ohio, they have absolutely rock-hard opinions about how kids should be taught in a classroom. And those opinions translate into physical reality. And they work for clients that accept that, and they throw away clients that don't. And when they work for clients that accept that, they charge 5 times the fee that you could get by charging for hours. When you talk to Andreas Duani right here in Florida, he has definitive opinions about the way town planning should and shouldn't be done. When you have such strong opinions, based on wisdom and based on knowledge, you will anger, I almost swore, but I won't, because I'm on tape, but you will anger half the clients, and they will never hire you. And the other half will love you and pay you 5 times what the mediocre will. But you're not selling hours. You're selling a concept, you're selling wisdom, and you have a thesis to back it up, and it is your thesis. Now, when you have that strong an opinion on some physical project, on some project type, your job, therefore, becomes to communicate your wisdom across the planet so clients will come to you. Not to go out in your community and do any kind of project for anybody, anytime. And by the way, when you do a new kind of project every week, it's hard to have an opinion about anything. Because then all you're selling is hours. And we translate that into, well, we do good design. I don't know what good design means, folks. I really don't. I've heard lots of architects tell me good design, when you see it, you know it. Man, that does not translate into economics in my book. Wisdom about specifics on a project type for which you are an expert and you have an opinion translates into higher economics. Now, I got a whole bunch of data that proves that. Data from firms like Duani, from others that are achieving high levels of profitability by focusing and then blowing up and expanding their geographic reach. Everybody in this room can do it. It takes discipline. First, it takes a concept, and then it takes real hard work and some really, really intense development of wisdom about how projects come together. You have to have opinions. And those opinions need to be controversial. And those opinions need to be founded in demographics and in other things. When you go to Fanning and Howey, their data supports how kids get educated. It's not about some fancy, beautiful, pretty design. It's about the reality of coupling the physical space to an opinion about an activity. If you're in the healthcare business, it's about, I remember one study I did right after we did the Nantucket thing. I left that firm and I went into the healthcare architecture business. And I'll never forget one study that I was involved in. I wasn't leading it, but I was involved in it, about the impact of the color of recovery rooms on the speed of recovery. You know, 99% of all hospitals in 1974, when I was doing this, were green. Yeah. All right? You know, that ugly green kind of color. And then we did this little study, and we painted rooms different colors, and then monitored the recovery rate of the people that went into those rooms. And it was fascinating to look at the color impact on recovery. Now, to me, that's a bit of wisdom about design. It's not about picking a color because you like it. It's about picking a color that's supported with data. So I encourage you to think about changing our business model. Get out of the business of selling hours. I'd almost like to do away with all time cards. Here's my saying that I teach in our programs. Price on value, manage on cost. Never price on cost and never bill on cost. Let me give you one more thing here, and then I'll be right on time. I didn't even show you one slide. How's that? Okay. By the way, don't you hate it when people put up 432 slides and don't say anything? Yeah, let's see, all right. A couple of other things. What do you do right now? Well, you know, the economy is what it is. Isn't it ironic that a year and a half ago, the biggest issue in our design profession was, I can't find people. How many people were there? Man, can you find people today? Now, here's what I want you to do. Let me give you 4 or 5 things to do coming out of this economy. First, if I show you all this data, and I want you to download it because it's all very self-descriptive. You can read. It's all on the slides. It's data right out of our survey and out of our June 30th study. If I show you all that data, one of the things you'll see is that we're going to be coming out of this recession pretty quickly based on what these 500 firms are looking at in their communities. Now, you're in Florida. And trust me, I'm on the board of PBS&J here, and I come to Florida all the time, and we bring our trade show here in October, bring 10,000 architects and engineers here this October for our MetalCon trade show, which is everything to do with metal in buildings. And man, it's hurting here. It's hurting in Florida. Florida's a bad place economically as the country goes. It's much worse off than where I live in Boston. California's hurting. When I go to California, they're in the tank, folks. And I'm not going to pretend to say that things are rosy when they're not. All of you in this room are hurting. There is nobody that hasn't been touched by the downturn. Nobody. When I talk to staffs, they're all holding back on spending. Everybody's cut back on everything. Everybody's concerned about conserving and going forward. That's true. But now what do? The first thing that happens, and I remember at least 3 of these recessions, is that when we start to come out of a recession, okay, we don't want to be the last one out. Because the last one out loses all the opportunities. So let me give you 4 or 5 things based on experience and based on where we are right now that you need to do. One of the things that Steve didn't say that you don't know, I mean, the last time I was here for fun was in February when I did 2 things. I sat in the Super Bowl and watched my wife's team, the Steelers, do a job. And then I went and played baseball with the Red Sox, which I do every year at the fantasy camp in Fort Myers. And so I love sports. I love teams. I'm a Patriots fan through and through. Damn New York Giants, I still can't sleep over that one. But if you're in a sports team and you want to win the Super Bowl or you want to win the pennant, what do? You keep trading players until you get the best team and you go out there and kick butt. Now's the time to trade players. Right now. Right now, you have the best opportunity in your lifetime to upgrade your staff. And if you are not doing it from the top to the bottom, you are losing an opportunity. Now's the time to fire a non-performing partner, a non-performing project manager. Stop kidding around. It's time to get people that are good, and if you don't have them in your firm, go get them. That's advice number 1. Upgrade your staff now, because when you come out of this, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to find them. They're not going to be around. So now is the time to do that. And be critical. Do not tolerate non-performance now at the highest level. You need to cut diagonally. If you've got partners that aren't cutting it, cut the partnership. It's a tough message, but it'll get even tougher if we get busy, guys, because you won't be able to find replacements. So that's number 1. Number 2, be prepared to move fast. If there's anything you have to learn by the technology, by what's going on in the world and where we are, think about how fast this came on. Think about how fast it came on. I mean, all of a sudden, we're in a recession. All of a sudden, clients are calling up and stopping projects. Bang, just like that. And it spread like wildfire. We have the media, we have technology, we have everything else, and just like that it happened. But you know what? We could be out of it just like that. And if that happens and suddenly your clients start calling you, are you ready to go to work? Are you ready to get things done? Can you meet the schedules? Can you beat the budgets of the competitors who are getting better than doing it? If we're going to win the Super Bowl, we better know how to do the blocking and the tackling now. So make sure your team is ready to work and that you can move fast when you need to. Number 3, break down the geographic barriers. You can go any place on this planet, folks. You can go any place on this planet if you have the wisdom about a project. You can go any place on this planet. We have designers that are 5-person firms doing work in China, in Australia, in London. You can do anything. There are no barriers. The barriers are right here in your own mind. So think about breaking those geographic barriers. Now you have to do it. You have to do it in ways that are maybe uncomfortable to you. We're talking with one firm right now, and they're talking about sending people into the Middle East. And that's an uncomfortable thing for some people to do, because you risk life. You risk sending a person to the Middle East who works for your firm. They might get shot, or they might get blown up, or something might happen. But you have to ask yourself, are we moving our firm? What's our long-term vision? Do we need to do this? And can we find people that will get on airplanes? One of the rules that I never forget, my wife worked for IBM. When she went to work for IBM, when they hired her, they said a very interesting thing. You will work on 7 continents, and when we expect you to move to Sydney, we'll give you 30 days notice. If you can't handle that, tell us now. And that's what they did, because when we were engaged to be married, she's my second wife, when we were engaged to be married, I came home one day and she said to me, I got a problem. I said, what's the problem? She said, they've just assigned me to Sydney, Australia. Now to me, that wasn't a problem. I said, fine, I'm going. But to her, she was very concerned about that, because they gave her 30 days notice to report to the office in Sydney. Now, do you have people that will do that for you? Do you need to have people that will do that for you? Ask yourself those questions. And finally, look at your own self. Go home and look in the mirror and ask yourself, is the glass half full or the glass half empty? I mean, attitude's a whole big thing. I tell people, hire an attitude, right? Because you can train people with a good attitude to do anything. If you don't hire an attitude, you can't untrain a bad person. Trust me. We do more project management training than anybody on the planet. Our project management boot camps continue to sell out. There's still people coming, and some of you have sent people to our project management training. And with all these project managers we've trained, a lot of them keep coming back because they don't get trained, because they got the wrong attitude to begin with. Now, I'll take your money to try to keep training bad apples, okay? But you all know what I'm talking about. You hire on attitude, right? And you don't tolerate non-performance. Because when you hire people with the right attitude, it'll change everything. And that starts right at the top. Look in the mirror. What's my attitude? Can I make this? Do I have a vision for what this firm will be 5 years from now, 8 years from now, and 10 years from now? And your primary job, if you're the managing partner in your firm, is to absolutely hold in your hand the morale of your firm, the hope for the future. And to give these people the hope and the inspiration that there's something coming down the line. Whatever that is, whether it's your design thesis, an economic, bonanza, a move to a new place, a sale of the firm into a bigger firm. I don't know what it is, but whatever that hope is, that's your job. When I come into my office, and we just redesigned our office and put all kinds of money into it, made it an architectural gem, because I'm an architect, it's got to be an architectural gem, You don't have to make any money, you just got to have a nice looking office. Yeah. But, I did all that stuff, and now I walk in, and I get concerned, because one of the things we did with the design is we put, this technology, we put people into quiet spaces so they could look at their screens. I like a buzz in the office. How many people like a buzz in the office? Anybody remember when I used to walk into offices and you could tell it was busy? Because there'd be 6 people around a drawing table with a roll of drawings and some pencils coloring, and there'd be an intercom, and somebody would say, call for Frank on line 3. Now you got people all over the office, right? You know an office is busy when the lights are low, people are looking at screens with earplugs on, emailing the person 3 feet away. It's a different situation. So now my question to you is, when you look in that mirror, have you got the buzz of your firm in your hands? Because that's your job. And when you walk in every day and it's like, and let me swear one time, and it's, oh shit, the recession's on again. And you walk in and you got your head in your hands, they all watch you. And your job as a principal in a design firm in Florida is to give them the hope for the future. So I can't say an awful lot else about anything up here other than what I've said. I think the biggest thing, if you don't take anything else away from this, is remember that change in the business model that we've got to do. And it's not AIA's responsibility to do it. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's not the big firm's responsibility. It's not the client's responsibility. It's your responsibility to have a thesis and an opinion that you're willing to put a price on, and somebody says, how did you calculate your price? Did you ever ask a lawyer how they calculate their price? They say, I don't know, it's just, that's the price. Duh, that's the price. And here's what I want you to be able to do. Every time you quote a new client, keep raising the price until they say no. And then when they say, how'd you calculate it? I didn't, I just made it. Period. Because that's the value of what you're getting from our wisdom. Now, you know, obviously I'm standing up here speaking and I can exaggerate a little bit, and I understand that I am, but I want you to think along the line of getting out of the hourly business and getting into the value business. It's the savior of our profession. Otherwise, I got to tell you, it's a sad story 100 years from now if we all keep selling hours. Thank you very much.